Music Not Diving is brought to you by Acid Nation. What is Acid Nation? Well, it's a direct-to-consumer platform, a D2C platform in the vernacular, and they are offering a really great service in this space. So if you're selling music as an artist or a label, or if you're a music fan looking to connect more directly with your favorite artists and labels, well, this is a great place for you to be spending your time and your money. As mentioned, they're doing a hell of a lot more than the average platform in this space. They've got their own pressing plant. They can fulfill vinyl orders on demand, so they have their own fulfillment service too. They have a streaming platform which pays out 1 cent per stream, the mythical 1 cent per stream, not pro rata, just a payment of 1 cent per stream is reality over on Acid Nation. So we use them for Hot Fuzz recordings. All of our stuff is up there and we couldn't recommend them highly enough. So I suggest if you're selling music or buying music, like I said, head over to acidnation.com to check them out.
This is Music Not Diving with Scuba.
Welcome to the show. I'm Scuba. This is Music Not Diving. Okay, this is super late. It was supposed to come out last week. I had flu, however, over Christmas. Happy holidays, by the way. Hope you had a good one. Mine, as I said, was not great. But we do have a podcast today that was supposed to come out last week. It is the kind of roundup, my roundup of 2025. Not necessarily things that came out in 2025, but things that I enjoyed, experiences that I had that were memorable, and also a couple of things that I didn't like too. So, yeah, you're going to maybe disagree with me on some of these things. That's completely normal. Let us know in the comments which things you agreed with and disagreed with. Maybe tell me, the things that you liked the most in this year, not necessarily things that came out, but what were the best experiences you had? What were the things that really stood out in your mind? And we can move forward to 2026 in harmony. Yeah, something like that. So without further delay, let's get into my roundup of 2025.
Brought to you by acidnation.com.
Anyway, what are we doing today on the pod? Well, as mentioned, didn't do one last week. We're supposed to do a roundup of the year, and because it's the 31st, this still just about counts, doesn't it? As a roundup review, best of 2025. So I've just written a little kind of newsletter type list thing talking about or expanding upon the notes that I made for this episode. Some things that really caught my interest, I suppose, during this year. Not necessarily things that came out this year, but things that were new to me, things that I experienced for the first time over the course of this year, some of which came out this year and some of which didn't. In fact, almost all of which didn't. And spoiler alert, I haven't got a track of the year. I was kind of going through it and thinking, this really should have a track of the year entry at some point in it. And I just don't really have one. I mean, I just can't think of any standout record. I mean, there's a standout album that I will talk about a bit, but there's no standout single. There's no standout track. I mean, maybe the one that, I don't know. I mean, I was tempted to put the Mala tune down, the Militant Dawn, but I mean, it's a great record, but it's a little bit reminiscent of Badadan, and I just don't know. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't feel strongly enough about it to say it was pick it out as a standout. I mean, the album that I'm picking out is definitely, I think, worthy of that title. But yeah, I've just seemingly, like, looking down my notes, I've really. Well, I mean, judging by what I've written, you would be forgiven for thinking that I've fallen out of love with music, dance music in particular, but music generally speaking. All the stuff I've written down, or the vast majority of the stuff that I've written down, has nothing to do with music at all. My interests seem to have gone past that. I mean, I've got a few, sort of longer term projects that I've been working on this year that haven't been completed. Like there's a video in particular that I've been planning for ages, over 6 months, and I just haven't pulled my finger out and done it. That's a music related thing, I mean. And I've been, sort of teasing this idea that I've been working on an actual music project, a longer form music project, and I haven't finished that either. And I think it's just because I've been feeling quite uninspired by everything. And I think quite a lot of people seem to be too. So, I mean, let's just start this, shall we? Let's just go through my list of things. So my sort of 2025 conclusions conclusions of the year. What have I written down? Basically, my first note for this was people are terrified of change. And I think this is best expressed with the AI music thing. The debate around that is hysterical, not in the, humorous sense. Someone really good to follow on this is Matt Dryhurst, who's been on the podcast a while ago. But he's talking about it from the artistic perspective. And one of the things I'm going to do coming up to put what I hope are going to be a few discussions about this, put them in context. The podcast I did 2.5 years ago now, which was entitled The End of Recorded Music, ? Which was basically setting the table for the AI debate. And in that, I basically say that I don't consider contemporary popular music, to be art. And I don't consider the people who do it, including myself, to be artists. But Matt is talking about it explicitly from the perspective of art, formal art, like visual art and, making music as an art form explicitly as opposed to a sort of commercial entity. And he does a really good job, I think, of making the bull case for AI in an artistic sense. And I think what people feel apprehensive about with regards to AI is really the kind of encroaching upon the ability of people to make functional popular music, including dance music. Because, you can just stick a prompt into Suno and you get a track. Which is just reality now. And you can do the same thing for stems and all the rest of it. And if you want to, you can cheat. But if you're an artist, you will not do that, I think, is the bottom line. And, if you're competing with people who are going to do that, then are you really making art in the first place? I would suggest that you're probably not. But I mean, I think so. So basically, I think like the debate around AI music kind of pulls the curtain back to a large extent on the reality of what's going on here and the fact that it's not really an artistic endeavor. This is not, high culture. There are cultural, important cultural forces around popular music and dance music. But, the act of making a dance track in 2025 or even a pop track is not really artistic at all. So the kind of general fear around this, the flames have been fanned by disinformation through moral panics around streaming services in particular, one streaming service in particular, also around, the Superstruct thing, the, boiler room thing, these boycotts that have looked more significant than they have turned out to be. I think that the festival lineups that have been already announced for next summer by these Superstruck festivals, by Sonar and various other of these big things which are going on, the boycott is not really doing much to discourage people, seemingly. I think basically there is a kind of wide assumption amongst the majority of musicians that it's not going to be a thing next summer. And that might be wrong. That might turn out to be wrong. I think the fact that there is a ceasefire in the, quote unquote ceasefire in the war that everyone was angry about, or the conflict that everyone was angry about, that particular one, I think that's, led to it falling off the agenda, I think, to a large extent. And it's likely to be off the agenda through this year, certainly in comparative terms anyway. So I think there is an assumption that you can play those festivals now without too much backlash. The backlash is going to be, confined to, a few social media accounts, a few journalists, and that may or may not turn out to be the case. But it seems that trend, which seemed at some certain points during this year to be a sort of a cresting wave, I don't think that's going to go anywhere this year. But I mean, the disinformation absolutely continues. So, for example, I mean, there was a post on Instagram I got served the other day, some bloke talking about the $50 billion music industry and including the $12 billion in revenue for Universal. And the subtitle to the post, like how much of that money goes to artists. And then he just basically talked about the figure for advances, recoupable advances that Universal pays, which was, I think, in the region of 180 million for the year. So, not much. But I mean, obviously that is not, that's not an answer to the question, how much goes to artists. And he was sort of saying that it's bad that artists, generally speaking, don't recoup. But of course, if you get paid an advance and you don't recoup it, you don't pay that money back. That's not something that a label ever pursues an artist for. It's free money, basically. And if your music is successful, then yeah, you pay it off and then you start getting paid after you pay off the advance. But you still have that money. I mean, you've been given that money. So it's not bad for artists. But that kind of, sort of headline grabbing disinformation, I would call it disinformation, because I think it creates a false impression amongst people. Artists didn't get paid 180 million this year from a 50 billion pot. That's basically what it was made out to be in that post. And, likewise with Spotify, the whole Spotify doesn't pay thing, obviously we know it's nonsense, complete bull. It's sort of, symbolically true. But the problem is in so much of this kind of stuff, figures which are symbolically true and kind of tell a story are seen and are kind of like referred to as empirical data. But that's a different debate. We can talk about whether, the streaming model is morally defensible or artistically defensible. I think those are two different things. You can make a decent case, I think, for the first one, much less of a good case for the second. But the data, and we've been through this on the podcast, as you well know, the data suggests that, well, actually it is delivering, and the problem is participation and what tech has done to the talentless being able to operate on the same platform as the talented. Obviously, no one wants to put it like that. And in that same Instagram post about the $50 billion, he's calling for solidarity between artists. But why should a talented artist stand in solidarity with a charlatan who is stealing their money, essentially? I mean, the fact of the matter is that almost no music that gets released is commercially viable. I mean, when I say commercially viable, is capable of generating revenue. Almost none of it is. So if you're, one of those tiny number of people who makes music that people actually wants to listen to, I mean, why should you stand with those other people? I mean, you might, from a moral perspective, feel an obligation to, but it's not a surprise that almost none of them do. Anyway, dance music is absolutely still stuck in a rut. This is, again, another year where there's basically no big hits, no big records, lots of good records. So there's a Instagram account called Percy's, which I will link to if I can remember it. And he basically features people and gets them to do their top 5 tunes of all time, whatever. And he's quite a good source for actually new music. He's got good taste, and he, posts up stuff that he finds and stuff. And he posted his top 10 or top 20 tracks of the year yesterday. And they were all good tunes. He had that Mala tune in there. But the Mala tune aside, none of them are like hits. There is nothing comparable to anything in the top probably 50 of 2010 or whatever. Basically, there's nothing in there that could not have been made at any point since 2010. And that's, I think, the problem. And, when I talk about, originality and doing something different and how it's just not really rewarded, and how the incentives have just become so misaligned that basically what you are rewarded for these days and right now in the dance scene, and I think probably in music more generally speaking, is being very safe, giving people what they want in a narrow parameter. Like in that context, it's not surprising that, scenes aren't springing up which are genuinely original musically. So we're still stuck in this rut. Experimentation is not encouraged or rewarded in the dance scene. I want to talk about my album of the year. We'll talk a bit more about that, which is not a dance album, but it's covers some of these things. And yeah, it's bad. It's really, really bad. And I think my comparative, or my perhaps continuing and accelerating lack of interest in the whole thing, I think reflects that. Not that there isn't a lot of good music coming out. There absolutely is a lot of good music coming out. Really fun tunes, really good club tunes, but just nothing memorable. Almost nothing memorable. So, yeah. Okay, so let's get into my list of things, almost none of which is stuff that came out this year, but stuff I enjoyed and stuff that I, was diverted by over the course of this year. So the album of the year, of course, it's Rosalia Lux, or however you pronounce it. And obviously that did come out this year. And I sort of, in my album of the year, I did restrict myself to stuff that came out this year. But I mean, the thing about this album is that it is a genuinely ambitious and original piece of work. And for a big ticket album, like a lot of money was spent on this album. It's on a major label. They spent a ton of time and a ton of money recording it, preparing for it. She, learned to sing in how many languages, 14 languages or something. Years of work went into this. It is a pretty amazing achievement, actually, for this thing to have been so long in the making, so long in the planning, and executed in a way which I think sounds quite effortless. I think it's really incredible, this album. And, the Berghain single was probably the worst thing on it. And Yves Tumor, his little cameo, it really clangs to me. I mean, I can appreciate that there is an artistic point to it, but it didn't need to be there, in my opinion. And yeah, it's a bit of a ding on the record that they kept it in. But I mean, generally speaking, it is absolutely amazing. And I was not a particular fan of Rosalia before this album, I should point out. I did not like the last album at all. I thought it was tedious and just a bit too, reggaeton, frankly. And this is something entirely different. And I think, interestingly about it, there was obviously this enormous wave of hype that accompanied it in the first place. There was this huge kind of outpouring, wow, this is amazing, it's the best thing ever. Since then, there's been a little bit of a backlash, I've noticed, I've detected. And this goes back to my point that originality is not really being rewarded right now. People don't really like it. People don't like being challenged, I think, by music and by cultural stuff, generally speaking. Being very safe is what gets you the plaudits, which is kind of weird. And obviously there are exceptions to this. And I will come to that in my worst album of the year, which we'll do. I think we'll keep that till the end. I don't want to be too mean. I do have a worst track of the year, by the way. Anyway, you are not, generally speaking, I think, rewarded, or sufficiently rewarded anyway, for being original and for being artistically ambitious, which is a bad place to be, quite frankly. But this has been obviously successful. I don't want to overstate that, but previous point. It's deservedly done very well. I mean, obviously she's a big star, but I mean, this is something I think it has connected with her fans, and it is a difficult piece of work in places, but I think it rewards perseverance. If you listen to it a few times, get used to it. It is exceptional, and it's not like anything else. I think, importantly speaking, it is not like anything else that's ever come out. It's unique. So, of course, it has to be the album of the year, like by a mile. Book of the year, fiction. This did not come out this year. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I am not a father. I'm in my mid-40s and I'm not a father. And I have a sort of love-hate relationship with that particular thing. Sometimes I really regret not having kids, and in particular, I regret not having kids early. Like, I spent my 20s were basically a waste of time, and my 30s were, the kind of active period of my working life as a musician. And, spending that basically whole decade on the road meant that, having a family was just not really, it wasn't practical. I sometimes wish I'd had kids before that, which obviously would have posed its own, questions and potentially problems. But it's a bit late for me now, probably. And I feel ambivalent about that. This book, which I read cover to cover in one sitting, I've never done that with a novel before. I picked it up randomly off the bookshelf at my parents' house, actually. Weirdly enough, I don't spend a ton of time at my parents' house, but I picked it up one morning and read the whole thing. And it simultaneously made me really, really wish that I'd had kids, and also, really, really grateful that I haven't had kids, and will never have kids. It's so I've never read a more intense fiction book. It's from start to finish, from first words to final words, just absolutely relentless in the best possible way, I think. I mean, I wouldn't say it's an enjoyable read, but it's absolutely compelling. It's the most compelling work of art I've experienced this year by just by a mile, an absolute mile. And it stayed in my head just way more than anything else. I'm reading currently The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco, which is the polar opposite of this, but I'm actually very much enjoying it too. But I'm not a great reader of novels, I should emphasize. And reading The Road has really got me back into reading novels. And anyway, so the Name of the Rose is essentially 500 pages of monks talking to each other about whether Jesus laughed or not. And I haven't made much of a dent in it, put it that way. I'm about halfway through after about 3 weeks of reading it. So just the complete opposite. But a great novel is unlike anything else, I think. And it's a real shame, I think, that men in particular are not seen as being novel readers. And almost no novels seem to get published at the moment that appeal to men. And I don't know the extent to which that's a kind of chicken and egg situation, but Cormac McCarthy I've read a few others of his back in the day, but I mean, this is just a visceral experience. Okay, non-fiction book, Dominion by Tom Holland. I had an wholly unexpected side quest this year, which was developing an interest in the history of Christianity. Christian philosophy, theology, and its impact on contemporary culture. I did not have a religious education at all as a kid. I basically know nothing about it. And I think commonly for certainly British people of my generation, and probably this current generation, we just don't learn about it in school at all. And it's the kind of operating system for popular culture, I think, to a more fundamental extent than is ever acknowledged and ever realized, really. I mean, I think maybe Americans have a better kind of grasp of it because it's a far more religious kind of a country. And obviously popular culture is to a large extent American today. But it is remarkable the lack of understanding, even of the basics, that we have as well. I mean, I'll talk about myself really, but I think it's certainly common to my peer group. Anyway, this is basically a series of chronological essays starting in antiquity and ending in present day, talking about the development of Christian ideas, I suppose, starting pre-Christianity, but like as I said, going up to right now, in the sort of like godless Protestantism, which I guess dominates, as mentioned, popular culture in the mid-2020s. But yeah, absolutely fascinating, and was a sort of jumping off point for me in the development of a wider interest, to the extent that I found myself leafing through the pages of the Old Testament yesterday, which was just not on my bingo card for 2025 at all. I mean, I've said some really unpleasant things about monotheism, generally speaking, in the past, on Twitter. I've been very rude about religious people, religion generally speaking, but the sort of what I consider to be the sort of credulity of the religious. And there's one religion in particular which you can't say that about, but Christians, and as a sort of white Western European, you can stick the boot into Christianity and Christians, I think, in a way I think people have a tendency that they sort of think they're being clever when they do that, and I've definitely fallen into that trap in the past. But actually, it's just really interesting. The whole thing's really interesting. Anyway, it's a great book. I would highly recommend it. And again, didn't come out this year. I think it's about 10 years old now. Maybe less. Maybe, yeah. Anyway, Tom Holland, one of the hosts of the Rest of This History podcast, which is, a basic podcast recommendation, but just unbelievably great. And I suppose, follow up to that podcast episode. What I wrote down was there's an episode of Sam Harris's podcast, Making Sense, which is usually a paywall thing, but this is a free-to-air episode entitled "What is Christian Nationalism?" And Christian nationalism is a topic which I think people should educate themselves about, because, it is acquiring a momentum which is quite scary in the United States and also in Britain, actually. So this was basically an interview with a guy called Doug Wilson, who is a Christian nationalist. And it's just almost a kind of fact-finding mission, just asking him what the deal is with it. And he is remarkably candid and, charming about it, actually. And I don't mean charming in the sense that he was persuasive. The guy is a lunatic, a dangerous lunatic, I would argue. But able to, articulate his beliefs in a good faith kind of a way, no pun intended, and just extremely informative. Well, yeah, informative on a topic which I think is extremely important to make an effort to understand, even if, or perhaps especially if you are opposed to these things, which, spoiler alert, I, generally speaking, am. So yeah, definitely worth a go, and really stuck in my mind as an important contribution. Okay, best nightclub. It's a bit of dance music stuff. So Sisyphus in Berlin, played there 5 times this year. Both rooms. The Hammerhalle room is the big techno room, and the Wintergarten is the sort of house room, if you can imagine it in Berghain kind of terms, if you haven't been there. Big techno room, smaller house room. And what I love about it is that it's a serious music place. It takes itself quite seriously in terms of it's done in the right way. The sound system's good. They've developed the venue in a way which is, I think, really great. But when you're there, it doesn't feel that serious. Like, people don't take themselves too seriously at it. There is a real, it's a party. It's that's, I think, the important thing. And, it might sound obvious, but that kind of attitude, I think, is sometimes lacking, particularly in Berlin. And Berlin clubs are the best clubs, but sometimes they can be a little bit navel-gazing. But Sisyphus is not that at all, and it's just been a joy to play there. I just love it so much. And, I've been back to Berghain as just to check it out this year for the first time in ages. Been there a couple of times. And it's still Berghain. It's still great. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's can be a little bit too self-regarding, perhaps. And I think maybe that's true of the crowd more than the venue, because the venue is basically just the same. And then the people who work there are the same. They're different people, but they are the same people. And maybe the crowd's changed a little bit, but Sisyphus is just awesome. So the session this month, 10 days ago, in fact, with George Fitzgerald and Jordan Osborne, we played all night, 9 hours, and it was a lot of fun. What can I say? You can play a lot of different stuff and people like it, which is not always the case in Berlin. There is this, one of the things that I've detected in the end of year lists and the kind of general discourse around DJing at the moment is that, well, kind of multi-genre and kind of jumping around all over the place seems to be considered, quote unquote, modern DJing. I noticed a RA writer sort of referring to it in that way, as if that's a new thing. But it's not something I particularly like, generally speaking, as a kind of punter in a club. I've talked about this many times. I want the tempo basically to be the same for the whole night, basically, or within, a fairly tight range. But within a tempo or a tight tempo range, you can make huge changes to the vibe, to the atmosphere, to the momentum without, playing a drum and bass track after a house track. I don't know why I've gone down this rabbit hole. So I'd say I haven't done that in my sets at Sisyphus, but I have played what I consider to be quite varied stuff, and the crowd there reacts in a good way. So that's good. Sisyphus in Berlin. Try and get there in 2026. I would recommend. Okay, forgotten hard rock album. Hysteria by Def Leppard. I was never into Def Leppard at all when I was a kid. Regular listeners will be aware that I was into Guns N' Roses a lot in that era. Also Metallica. Obvious choices at the time, but also the best bands at the time. So make no apology for being into those bands. This isn't the kind of pre-grunge era, which dates me, I realise. But yeah, that kind of up to 1993, let's call it, because it basically took that long for grunge to fully metastasize in the UK. Those were the two bands. Obviously, there are other bands too, but those two were great. Def Leppard were not just on my radar at all. And I've realised, having listened to this album a lot, the reason that I think I didn't really connect with them as a kid is that the singer doesn't have a distinctive voice at all. They've always got him doubled up. And when they do that on a record, when you never hear just one track of a singer, or it doesn't happen regularly on a record, it can seem quite distant. Like there can seem to be quite a large distance between the listener and the lead singer. And he could be anyone, basically. Any singer in a kind of like hair metal band. I don't even know what his name is. It's just not important. And also the guitar player is, well, he has no sense of melody. Like there's not a single memorable guitar lick. The solos are completely forgettable. The magic trick of Slash isn't his technical ability, it's his ability to write melodies and write solos which are instantly recognizable, and people sing along to Slash's solos. That's why he's a legendary guitarist, not because he's a particularly technically brilliant player. He's just got an incredible sense of melody. And whoever the Def Leppard guy is just doesn't have that at all. But what they do have is great songs and a great producer. I think Mutt Lange, was the producer on this record, and it just sounds massive and so, just monolithic, just this enormous sound, some brilliant production tricks, and like I said, really great songs. Like Hysteria, the actual song is just awesome. It's just the most 80s thing ever in the best possible sense. And I had a really great afternoon driving around Los Angeles, cranking this album. I spent the whole afternoon driving around, Beverly Hills and Hollywood, Pasadena, that kind of North LA kind of area. And it was awesome. And this was the best possible soundtrack to it. Honestly, yeah, just great. Following on from this theme, continuing this theme, gig of the year, Smashing Pumpkins at Gunnersbury Park in London. I did a bonus pod about this. I was scared to go and see them because, as mentioned, grunge didn't really hit in the UK until 1993 or so. I got into the Pumpkins in 1994 and saw them a couple of times, saw them on the Siamese Dream tour and saw them on the Melancholy tour. And those were two formative experiences in my musical life. And I was quite scared about seeing them again, basically, because I didn't want to ruin those memories. So I had a ticket to see them at Hollywood Bowl a couple of years ago, wussed out of going to it because I just thought, no, I'm not confident in I'm not confident in seeing them. I don't want to ruin those memories. But this time around, I was like, okay, let's do it. And they did not disappoint. It was an incredible performance. And, I'm not objective here at all. Clearly, this is the music of my childhood, and you're naturally predisposed to go easy on your experiences of seeing the stuff again. I mean, you will have seen the the footage of grown men crying at Oasis gigs this summer. Well, Pumpkins are my Oasis, and I shed a tear more than once during this concert. It was brilliant, yeah, absolutely brilliant. And I'm trying to be objective, but I think I've watched a ton of other acts this year, and I think this was the best. I think objectively, this was the best performance that I saw. I mean, they were just just a great rock band. And the thing about the Pumpkins is that, Billy Corgan from early on was sort of complaining that he wasn't going to be able to be a rock band long term, because he considered it to be something that you had to really do, you had to fully commit to. And if you didn't fully commit to it, then, it was not an authentic experience. And I think the tragedy of the Pumpkins is that he blinked with that. So they did the Adore album, it tanked, and they went back to rock. And I think if they'd gone full Radiohead, which they're completely capable of, then I think they would be, viewed differently to how they are now. Not that they don't have a lot of credibility. Like Melancholy is, probably your favorite producer's favorite rock album. I mean, there's so many people who in sort of contemporary electronic music that love that record. I mean, from like Fortet to Daniel Avery, who, lots of people who people like love that album. But it is a slightly tragic career. It's a slightly tragic catalogue. The post-Adore Pumpkins catalogue is, I think, a visible record of someone overthinking their musical output. But they didn't play any of that stuff at this gig, so that was fine. They basically played Siamese Dream stuff and Melancholy stuff, and that's the stuff you want to hear. I mean, some people like Gish, but it's a little bit too esoteric for me, Gish. I mean, Siamese Dream is a perfect album, and Melancholy is, they've reissued it. So there's 30 years of it this year, and I think it was the biggest selling double album of the 90s, which is something which I think is often forgotten. It was huge, absolutely huge. I think they sold about 15 million copies of it or something, which is insane considering, as I said, double album, double CD, 25 tracks or something, or 26 tracks. And it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Okay. What else have we got here? Oh, streaming service. Yeah, I wanted to talk about, we've talked about streaming services a ton on the podcast this year. And, that's divided opinion a little bit. I completely understand that. There is a streaming service called Adagio, which is dedicated to, it's just classical music. And the reason why I wanted to flag it up is because the experience of it is completely different. It's much more focused on that particular genre. And I think dance music could benefit from this kind of thing. So obviously classical music is, in terms of the metadata required to properly catalog it, it's completely different to popular music. So you absolutely need to be searching by composer, by performer, by conductor potentially. It's just much richer. The data required to do it properly is much, much richer than just sticking in track title, artist or whatever, which is how Apple Music and the rest of it work. And Adagio have managed to do this in an extremely elegant way, and it's, I think, a brilliant service. They have a user-centric payment structure, which is better, I think, much better than pro rata. It's subtly different to the Deezer one. I'm going to need to dig into it in greater detail, but it is, generally speaking, much better, I think, than the big ones in terms of payouts. The fairness of payouts, anyway, quote unquote fairness of payouts. It's not like you get paid much more because, as we've discussed, even when you do user-centric, it doesn't make a ton of difference. But it's just in terms of like the way it's thought about, it's vastly superior, I think, than the kind of one-size-fits-all kind of industrial streaming nonsense that we're subjected to. And like I said, the metadata searching functions are just, on another level. And I think, like I said, dance music, I think, would really, really benefit from something like this. So, the ability to search by label, like labels are so important in dance music. Being able to search by remixer specifically, it would be amazing to be able to search by mastering engineer, mixing engineer. That kind of stuff I think would be so valuable, because so much of the contribution to dance music is uncredited. Mixing engineers, co-producing, executive producing, all that stuff I think it would be incredible. And this is what digital music promised us, right? It's a lot of legwork to get it going. It requires up the front a lot of, commitment in terms of time and stuff, but perhaps there's an AI solution for this. I think there probably is an AI solution for this. So this is something which I think really could be copied and emulated in dance music. So it doesn't matter if you're into classical music. I really highly recommend going to check out Adagio. It's like, a tenner a month like the rest of them. And high quality audio as well, which is absolutely essential for classical music. So yeah, that's good. Right. Let's just quickly do a final worst album of the year, worst track of the year. Worst album of the year is Hexed by Aya. I said at the time that I thought it was maybe the worst album to ever be commercially released. If anything, my opinion of it has got worse. It's gone down. I mean, I don't understand why so many people like this. I mean, I just don't understand it. I mean, it's one of those pure, not sort of Nathan Barley moments, and it's objectively terrible. It's not clever. It's not fun. It's not nice in any way to listen to. It's just dreadful. It's dross, is what it is. And yeah, you're not clever by saying you like it. You're not showing any kind of intellectual heft by pretending to like this nonsense. And I'm going to say that. People are pretending to like this. It's not good at all. Worst track of the year, Kiki, What's a Girl to Do in 25. Kiki is a hard techno / donk DJ. I think she's Australian. Plays just terrible music, absolutely terrible music. And this remix of the Fatima Yamaha track is one of the worst things I've ever heard. I mean, it really is. It's genuinely, absolutely fucking awful. But, it's really successful. All right. This has been my 2025 roundup. Such as it is. Not a ton of stuff from 2025, but maybe 2026 will be more interesting. It's possible. I doubt we'll get an album as interesting as Looks in 2026, to be honest. But there might be some other good stuff that comes out that's worth talking about. So I think I mentioned earlier that I'm going to re-up my End of Recorded Music pod from 2.5 years ago soon, next few days. I want you to listen to that again because I think it's going to set the tone for the general themes of the podcast over the coming year. I hope it will anyway, because I think this is the important conversation. It's like, what is the nature of art in the music industry? Are we really making art? And if we're not, what does that mean? And if we are, what does that mean? So, yeah, have a listen to it when it goes up in a couple of days' time. Let me know in the comments what you think about this list. Am I an idiot? Am I short-sighted? Have I missed anything? In the categories that we've covered, what are your top things? What's your favorite book of 2025? Fiction and non-fiction. That's what I'd really be interested in. Were there any good music books? I don't think really there were, but maybe there were. So tell me. I read the Liz Pelly book, by the way, and I didn't think it was good. So, all right. Thanks for listening, and Happy New Year.
Music, not diving, with Scuba.